Finally, we've got to understand, even though we know we've got to walk confidently, we've got to walk ambitiously, we've got to walk humbly. Finally, we've got to understand that you were created to please God. You've got to walk courageously. You know, a master craftsman would never set out to create something that he didn't intend for it to please him, would he? A master craftsman, if he's going to create something, he would want it to please him. And so it's so important that we please him. And we know that we're created by God as Christians. And so we've got to understand what is it that pleases God. And, you know, Scripture is real direct. It doesn't take a seminary degree to understand this. You can just turn right to Hebrews 11:6, and it's just penetrating where it says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. Not sometimes possible. Not every now and then possible, not once in a while possible, just not possible. And you know what? Faith takes courage, doesn't it? Faith takes courage, and I want to tell you, God's ambitious plans will always require that you walk towards fear and faith. But when you walk towards fear and faith, I got to tell you, there's a great reward, because when you walk towards fear and faith, you experience real satisfaction and real joy. I've got a little story for you here. Several years ago, I was wanting to take the next step as a mountaineer. And so I called up a friend of mine who's much more experienced than me, and I asked him, I said, I want to take the next step. What would you do as a mountaineer to develop your skills? And he said, I'll tell you what I'd do. I'd do a technical climb up the Grand Teton in early season when it's going to require, crampons. And, a technical climb means it's not just a hard hike. This is rope to another man with a harness. It requires crampons and so forth, not just a hard hike up a big mountain. So I said, that sounds great. So he introduced me to another friend. I called him up, and I called Stephen, who's really a mentor in the climbing world to me, and I asked Stephen, I said, would you take me up the Grand Teton? And he said, sure, no problem, I'll take you up the Grand Teton. So I met him out there. I'll never forget as I drove up, pulled up to the Grand Teton there, and I remember looking at it, just thinking how imposing it was, just so big and grand there. And I remember looking up and thinking the top looks like a little bitty thimble, and I thought, I don't even know if you can stand up there. And I told him, I said, Stephen, it's just not possible to climb the Grand Teton. He said, man, no problem. I've climbed the Grand Teton many times. I'll take you up the Grand Teton. Just follow me. So we started hiking, got the backpacks on, and we hiked for about 8 hours till we reached the saddle of the Grand Teton. And the saddle, if you're looking at that picture, we can pull that back up again here. It's just to the left of the tallest peak there. That's the saddle. It takes 2 days to climb the Grand typically, especially that time of year. And so we were camping there, and I remember I was cooking over my one-burner stove there, and I was looking at the granite of the Grand and trying to imagine which way we'd walk up it and how we'd get up there. And so I was looking at it, and I noticed just to the eastern side is pretty much straight up and down when you're up there. Looks that way. Now, the western side's a little more slanted there. And so I thought, okay, we'll probably go up the western side and so forth. So I called Stephen over, and I said, hey, Stephen, point out to me where we're going to walk tomorrow, how we're going to get up there, and how we'll climb it. So he pointed over here to my, horror, the eastern side, the straight up and down side. He said, we'll go up that side. I said, Steve, you can't do that. That's not possible. I don't see how you can climb up the eastern side. He said, no. I said, why don't we just do the western side? I thought this was interesting. He said, actually, that's the more dangerous side, even though it looked easier. So I said, okay. And so he said, hey, get something to eat. Let's get to bed. So we went to bed early that evening. I didn't sleep much, man. I had some serious acid dropping in my stomach because, facing what I was about to face the next day. And so he woke me up about 3 o'clock, and we put our headlamps on, had a little something to eat, and we began to walk across the boulder-strewn field there of the Grand Teton until we hit the granite, where it's time to climb. And I remember putting my harness on here, getting suited up here with my harness. And I remember putting my boots with crampons on. And he tied one end of the rope to his harness, and I tied one end of the rope to my harness. And he said, we're going to do what's called technical climbing. He said, we're going to pitch climb this mountain. And he said, what that means is I'm going to take off, and I'm going to go out of sight. And about 15 minutes later, after I've gone out of sight, the rope's going to come tight on your harness, and I'm going to yell, climb, and you yell climbing, and then you begin to climb the Grand Teton, and then about 15 minutes later, you'll step up there next to me, and then I'll do it again, and you'll climb up to me, and we'll do it again and again and again, and about 4 hours later, we'll be on top of the Grand Teton. I was really nervous at this point, but there wasn't no turning back now. So he took off, and just as he was about to get out of sight, he said to me, he said, Holt, if you fall, I've got you. And he kind of waved at me there. And that wasn't making me feel a whole lot better at that point.